Hello, everyone. This is Dorie Clark, and this is our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. Our guest this week is Sarah Robb O Hagan. She's the author of the book Extreme You, and she's also the CEO of Exos. And we are excited to talk to her about all kinds of issues in corporate leadership. Sarah, great to have you here.
Awesome to be here, Dorie. Very excited.
Thank you so much. Well, okay, the first question that I want to start with here, you have an august resume, especially in the sort of sports/sporty world, I will call it. We've got former CEO of Flywheel Sports, global president of Gatorade, president of Equinox. You now lead Exos, which is a corporate wellness organization. I noticed that you started that job February of 2020, which leads me to believe that you may have had some interesting experiences when you were newly on the job. Can you talk a little bit about what leadership looked like for you in those earliest days?
I most certainly can. Yes, I joined the business that at the time, Dorie, we were running 400 bricks and mortar fitness facilities around the world. 1st of February 20, we both know what happened, right? So it was an extraordinary leadership experience because we were literally shutting down the business within the first 2 weeks of being there. And honestly, I think the most important thing was keeping our employees safe and well. And like it was, it's a whole bunch of things that you don't typically think about in your day-to-day operating life. But I would also say, and it sounds probably like what you would expect me to say, but never a better time to get to know a new team when they're in a crisis. And boy, did this team just pull together in a way I just was blown away by. And I think it really helped me understand culturally what was underpinning the business and how I needed to sort of pitch in and be a part of it, just seeing them in that moment. Yeah.
Wow. Well, it certainly sounds like a crucible that you were experiencing at the time. So, let me dig into this a little bit more. You are basically just building relationships with these people. You don't know them very well or sort of what their typical reactions are. Presumably, you're coming in and experiencing a lot of diversity in terms of, diverse perspectives, and I'm sure people probably had a lot of different opinions about what the appropriate moves were. How did you navigate that? And how did you quickly, as a leader, sort of take the pulse to understand where you should push versus where you should, sort of be listening more to other people? That strikes me as not an easy balance.
No, you're asking such a good question because I think for me, I think leading teams, the time with any team when you finally really get your stride is when you all understand each other's kind of unique risk tolerances, like energy tolerances, and you don't know that until you've had significant time together, and trying to figure it out in the moment is hard. But I think I would say I was lucky that I was stepping into a very established team. So I felt very, very confident that, I had a lot of years of industry experience to turn to. And I also think that it was a team that already knew each other. So I was like, I don't have anything much to add right now other than to understand the wisdom of this group. And I think what I could bring, having led through, I led a pretty significant turnaround in the 2008 financial crisis, was a sense of calm and we're going to be okay, and it's like, I think at the top of the house, you've got to be able to feel that, not just pretend that, feel that, in order for the team to have that sense of calm with you. So I think that's probably the most important thing that I bought. But for the most part, it was like, how do I help them do what they're going to do best?
Yeah, that's fantastic. This is Dorie Clark. This is our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. Our guest this week, Sarah Robb O Hagan. She is the CEO of Exos, and she is the author of the book Extreme You. So, Sarah, let me ask a little bit more about your book. I love this. I mean, this is pretty fun for a corporate leader to write this book. Your subtitle alone is right out there. And we're step up, stand out, kick ass, repeat. Tell us a little bit about the Extreme You philosophy, and also the role that it sort of served for you. Because for a lot of CEOs,
Mm.
they're not writing books. I mean, maybe they do as like a capstone of their career once
Yeah.
they have retired, but for a lot of folks, it's maybe seen as something to do later. Why did you want to write a book in the middle of your career, and why this book?
Yeah, great question. Well, as you said, I've been very lucky that the majority of my career has been in the sports and wellness and fitness and performance industry, right? So I have been really lucky to watch up close athletes, professional athletes, business leaders, like people who are incredibly accomplished, and see how they do what they do. Like, I'm just a very curious, I guess, study of human behavior. At the same time, when I wrote my book, which was about 5 years ago, I am a parent, and I was also managing teams of, a lot of age ranges coming into the workforce. And it really struck me. It was so clear to me that the same things going on with my kids in childhood sports, of everyone shows up and gets a trophy, was affecting sort of a younger generation coming into the workforce with sort of expectations that everyone's going to, equally get promoted and equally do. And then when I compared and contrasted that with people who I was lucky to witness really play at the top of their game, I connected a whole lot of dots, and I realized that actually we need to help our all generations understand how to really confidently play to your unique potential. And that means, by the way, equally understanding where you suck as where you're good, right? So for me, through my career, I had learned along the way that when you try to sort of make it look like you can do everything in the spirit of trying to do well or get promoted, you are not going to be as effective as when you walk in the door and say, hey, I'm really good at these three things, not so good at this. This is where I could use support or a teammate or whatever. And so that was what led me to wanting to write the book. I was just so curious about that. How do you bridge that gap and sort of provide a little bit of a roadmap for people to really explore the best of themselves? And I think the last thing I would say is the big learning I got from all of it, in a nutshell, was what we now talk a lot about in terms of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that is that we do our best work and we play our best game when we're just authentically true to ourselves. And I definitely had experiences in my career in corporate environments where I even had to dress a way that wasn't like really who I was. And I showed up differently to when I just showed up as me. And so I was like, how can I help people understand how to authentically do that and not feel worried about doing that? Because that's where you will become a stronger version of yourself.
That's great. That's really interesting. We're here with Sarah Robb O Hagan. She's the author of Extreme You. Now, Sarah, one of the ways that I thought was interesting that you defined Extreme You is living at the edge of your own potential. And I'm curious, can you tell us a little bit more? How do we identify that? How do we know what our potential is?
Yeah.
I think most people would like to be able to reach it, but how do we even sort of begin to quantify that or understand what that looks like?
So it starts with the difference between going through life and comparing yourself to others, and going through life and going, I want to understand how to further develop myself. So number one is like, if you spend your life looking at the person next door going, I want this, that, or the other, you're never going to play to your own potential. So then once you go, okay, I want to figure out how to live on the edge of my own potential, what I learned from a ton of study and interviewing really interesting people when I wrote my book is that whenever you get to a point in your career or your life or your relationships where you're just comfortable, like you've gotten good at what you're doing, you've gotten comfortable with what you're doing, if you don't push yourself to a more uncomfortable place, by definition, you're going to sort of become a little bit more complacent. And so this idea of living at the edge of your potential is constantly being willing to push out just a little bit further, try something that you haven't done before. Now, for some people, you'll have times in your life like you're a parent, you've got young children. Oh my goodness, I haven't got time, to try something new. But maybe you have in a creative aspect of your life or a physical fitness aspect of your life. Like there's always ways that you can sort of push out a little bit further. and try something that makes yourself a little bit uncomfortable. And it may be in your career, it may be at life, it may be at home, it may be in a friendship.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Now, Sarah, as people can perhaps tell from your accent, you are, I believe, from New Zealand originally. Is that right?
That is right. Proud Kiwi, very proud.
Amazing. So I'm curious. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you being from another country, a far away country, impacts your perspective on diversity issues. Obviously, diversity looks very different in New Zealand than it does in the United States. You know, there's different topics, different fault lines, different ways that people think about it. How has coming from another culture shaped the way that you think about things?
Yeah, hugely. The first thing I would say is that what's really unique about New Zealand is that we were the first country in the world to give women the vote in 1892, which was actually almost 30 years before the United States in 1920. And so, right there, I didn't even know it, but I was growing up in an environment that just by definition of the history of my country had much greater expectations for what a woman could do. Simple as that. And I didn't even know it, right? Until I lived here. And I remember moving to the United States in my 20s. I'm working in the sports industry and this thing called Title IX. I was like, why would you need something called Title? You know, it was just like a whole different approach. Obviously, I understand deeply now why we need things like Title IX. But I think it, to me, is such a lesson of how the impacts that we have today can, you know, have ripple effects for centuries, not just years, you know, if we can start to move the ball forward. So I do think living in a different country, it does give you a different perspective. I think the other thing, which is really interesting to me, because diversity is so many things, it's also mindset, right? I grew up in a country where we're tiny. We don't expect to win medals at the Olympics. We're always like fighting to just get on the medal stand, you know, whereas here in America, we expect a lot. And therefore, I think that gives you a different mindset. Like I tend to come at things with I'm going to swing really hard. And if I miss, oh, well. Whereas here, I feel like we're a culture that we have very high expectations of winning, of succeeding, and that's a different mindset. So I think knowing that about yourself means when you come into a team, it's fun because you can, like, at times I actually love being pulled along a little bit by some of my colleagues from other countries that didn't grow up in the same way.
That's fascinating. I love that perspective. Now, you were just talking, Sarah, about the fact that you were coming up in the sort of sports and fitness world, and that's certainly a place that I think, you know, I'd say at least in the last 10 years, you probably have a much better sense than I do, where there's been, in terms of the broader conversation of diversity, a lot of talk about moving away from sort of the previous ideal of, you know, okay, we're only going to feature people who look like Greek gods. That's what we're going to lionize. Everybody needs to aspire to that standard. And perhaps embracing more diversity in terms of, you know, whether it's sort of models and advertising or speaking to people whose fitness goals or at least their ability to actualize their fitness goals may differ from the kinds of Olympians that have been lauded in the past. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, sort of that evolution and how and why that's happened?
Oh, it is so profound how much it's changed. I can't even tell you, because I started my career in marketing and communications and advertising, and absolutely we would cast the best looking, you know, fittest, muscliest person for advertising without a doubt. And you know, I think I think we can credit the younger generations a lot for this shift, because it's funny, I am raising three kids. I love watching the way this generation are so much more open-minded about what even beauty is, you know, or what aspirational is. And I think it's been wonderful to see it shift. And I actually do think, you know, you're going to continue to see this trend. I don't think we'll ever go backwards. You know, I think it's going to keep moving forward and forward in terms of how can everybody see themselves and celebrate themselves and be confident in themselves. in a way that we didn't, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you so much. We're here with Sarah Robb O Hagan. She is the CEO of Exos. She is the author of the book Extreme You. This is Dorie Clark with our weekly Newsweek interview show, Better. Now, one of the features, Sarah, that we have every week on Better is that we ask our guests to nominate someone that they know or that they have worked with, to be the better leader of the week. And this is someone who is a bit of an unsung hero who, in whatever capacity, broadly defined, you believe has been positively advancing the world and positively advancing issues of diversity. And your nominee, Sarah, is Monica Loudermilk. Can you talk a little bit about Monica and why she should be the better leader of the week?
She is a rock star. I'll start there. So she works with me at our company, Exos, and she leads our research team. So she's actually incredibly interesting in terms of the research into the science of human performance and human improvement. That's what she does for a job. But why I consider her to be such a sort of unsung hero, as you described, within our company, she's someone who just brings so much positivity to every conversation. She's really spent time not only internally participating very heavily in the culture of our company with our employee resource groups, et cetera, but she's really helped us to think about how do we ignite the next generation, like pioneering really cool ideas like a little scholarship program that we've started for young people wanting to grow into the kind of leaders that we all want to see in the future. So she's just a remarkable breath of really fresh air that you want to follow her anywhere.
Oh, I love that. Well, that is very cool. Monica, congratulations on being the better leader of the week. That's terrific.
Really cool.
Now, Sarah, another thing that I was interested in, we've been talking a lot about various aspects of culture and how we're, transmitting culture effectively. Now, I know that at Exos, you have implemented something called the Exos Readiness Culture Code, which is a blueprint that is reimagining corporate culture. Can you talk a little bit about what this is and how you're envisioning this reimagination of corporate culture?
100%. Yeah. So what we do as a business is we work with HR professionals across the world on helping their employees with their well-being and frankly, like taking their performance to the next level. And it's been a phenomenally interesting time to be in this job because, as you know, the last 4 years, the shift to hybrid work, the shift to staring at each other on screens all day, the shift to people not wanting to come back to offices and therefore being isolated. All of these things are causing what we know is a pretty significant crisis around burnout and exhaustion. And so we're very excited to start a lot of research in the last few years on how do we improve the well-being of the end employee in a world of new dynamics, like everything I just described. And we basically codified this, what we're calling a culture code for companies wanting to try and improve it. And it includes everything from actually the 4-day work week, which we're currently researching on our own employees to understand how their well-being, their sense of joy, their productivity has improved over a period of time when they work the 4-day work week. It includes rules around Zoom calls. Like we actually at our company, if you don't need a camera, we actually we recommend that you don't use a camera because it's actually harder on your eyes and your brain when you're focusing on something small all day. When you're having one-on-one meetings, we encourage you to go for a walk and talk as opposed to sitting in your chair, staring at a screen. We have rules like a meeting can't go for more than an hour without a stretch or what we call a recharge break. So they're all little hacks, I guess, that we would say today to help the employee finish their day not feeling burned out and exhausted, but feeling ready to now enjoy the evening with their family and get ready for the next day.
That's so powerful. I mean, certainly just about everybody experienced, most of 2020 as being 14 hours a day of continuous Zoom calls. So yes, those sound like excellent solutions. So we have been here with Sarah Robb O Hagan. She is the author of Extreme You. You can check it out and learn more about her at extremeu.com. She's the CEO of the corporate wellness company Exos. Sarah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, everybody, and we'll see you next week.